Welcome back everyone. Today we're taking a look at the best Pokemon fan games and ROM hacks released or updated in April of 2025. Keep in mind that this is a monthly series, so even if you don't see something here that you like, you can always check out the previous videos and subscribe for future ones. So without further ado, let's get started. Starting off strong with a completed project called Pokemon Awakening. Now, let me immediately say that this isn't your average fan game. You aren't playing as a trainer who gets their starter from a professor and leaves on a journey to collect 8 gym badges. Instead, you'll play as an apprentice of the village sage, but after your grimoire reacts strongly to a cave hidden behind a waterfall, you're then tasked with retrieving treasures across the world before they fall into the wrong hands. Now, I know that might have sounded a bit confusing, and I don't blame you, because the story is a very long one, but despite my confusions, or inability to understand it entirely, I did very much enjoy it, as you'll meet plenty of different characters as you travel across the region. However, the story is just a small piece of what makes this game so good, because you'll also have Pokemon from all 9 generations available to capture. I wasn't able to confirm if it's all of them, but I didn't feel like anything was missing, as the Pokemon variety was very strong, giving you tons of options to build your team in the early game. Not only do you also get the EXP all to make training them easier, some of that EXP will even seep into your storage boxes, allowing your reserve Pokemon to not fall behind completely. But even if they do, there's a ton of content in the overworld to help you get back up to par, such as boss Pokemon and a plethora of side quests. Even if you don't want to do all that though, I don't think it'll matter too much, as the game isn't very difficult, and I was able to deal with bosses by just bringing positive type matchups to every fight. Finally, Awakening also has a class system. As you progress through the story, you'll unlock various classes that can empower you through battle, with effects like healing fields, cursing the enemy, or just a simple stat boost. The world and characters in this game just feel so alive, with the overworld encounters, optional dialogue, and enormous amount of side quests. It's a really incredible fan game that I just can't find anything meaningful to nitpick about, so I highly recommend playing it if you want a good game with a long story. We're not done with new completed games though, because April also saw the release of MarioMon. It's a ROM hack that takes elements of Super Mario and combines it with Pokemon. But I have to admit, this is a game everyone has heard of already, including friends of mine who don't even play ROM hacks. So instead of talking about what it is, let's talk about how good it is. MarioMon is an incredibly polished ROM hack, and I know I've said that about tons of other hacks in the past, but I mean it here with absolutely zero exaggeration. Every aspect of the game has had so much attention given to it. The worlds are fun to progress through, each feeling unique in their own way. The story is very charming, but still enjoyable if you don't know too much about Mario. The same can be said for the new Pokemon. Very charming, even if you don't recognize the games they come from. Even the balance of the game feels incredible, as Pokemon learn tons of useful moves, and you'll have a plethora of them to choose from for your early team. It was obviously made by people who are both huge fans of both series, but also understand what makes a good Pokemon ROM hack. And one more thing I have to compliment about the hack is that unlike almost every other crossover hack ever made, it actually felt like more than just Pokemon with Mario characters. Even if you don't care for the Super Mario IP, I still highly recommend playing it, as it's obviously going to be in the top 5 Pokemon ROM hacks released this year. Next up, we have yet another Pokemon ROM hack by the name of Dreamstone Mysteries. In this hack, you're a brand new trainer on an adventure through the Camoria region, with the goal of collecting 8 gym badges. Now I will admit the game's story did feel pretty basic, at least to me, but where I think the hack really shines is its gameplay. Your journey begins by selecting one of 5 character choices, and then one of 3 untraditional starters that have had their evolution levels modified to fit the more expected ones. The Pokemon variety is very strong, with 300 Pokemon across all 9 generations spread throughout the region. The developer definitely didn't hold back with the early game options. as I found a lot of strong Pokemon like Tinkatank, Rookity, and Axew before even reaching the first gym. And best of all, the need to grind felt non-existent, with the EXPL enabled from the start of the game. The world itself was very fun to explore, built with a modified tile set of Pokemon Emerald that took you through some very interesting places very early, not to mention the Pokemon following behind you, and a plethora of side quests to complete. But an interesting gimmick this game offers for a more challenging experience is routes being structured as one-way paths, meaning once you move forward, you can't backtrack to the Pokemon Center, removing the run back and heal pattern and encouraging you to prepare for each step of your adventure. As much as I enjoy Dreamstone Mysteries, it is an unfinished game, but the creator does plan for a completed release next month, so I highly suggest at least keeping your eye on this very promising ROM hack. Up next, we have another project with a new region and story. These are definitely my favorite, beating enhancement hacks out of the water when it comes to personal enjoyment. But this is Pokemon Hollow Woods, and starting with the plot, you're the child of the leader of the Lavender faction, one of the two groups that hold control of the Oblar region. While the story does follow the 8-gym formula, you are also tasked with researching the region's unique Pokemon forms, which I'll talk about more later. Now, I have to admit the story is a bit of a mixed bag in terms of quality. The world building is done very well, with different factions, news broadcasts, and a very large number of side quests. The region feels lived in, and your actions feel significant. On the other hand, I felt the dialogue itself was pretty basic. Not bad or boring, but for such in-depth world building, I guess I kind of expected the writing to match that. Back to those unique Pokemon forms, Hollow Woods features over 65 regional variants. They all look pretty good, nothing too insane, but they also aren't very common, so outside of your starter, don't expect to be handed many freebies. But there is at least a pretty good variety of canon Pokemon from the first 8 generations, and having stats that match that of Sword and Shields. And they'll be very easy to train thanks to the EXPL. As for the difficulty, I didn't find any of the important battles to be too hard, and I think that was mostly due to just having a balanced team of strong Pokemon. Overall, I will say that Hollow Woods felt like a pretty average experience. Not a bad one at all, but nothing that really blew me away. The current version will take you to the 7th gym with around 14 hours of content, so I do hope that there's some room for a bit more of a unique game to come out of a future update. Now, April was a very good month for Pokemon ROM hacks and even fan games, but there are a few smaller projects that I did want to give some attention to, so let's quickly take a look at some honorable mentions, starting with Pokemon Evolved. This hack has a very cool and arguably very unique gimmick, giving the original 151 Pokemon up to 5 new evolution stages, bringing the total Pokemon count to 354. Now, as cool as these new evolutions are, the game, before you reach these evolutions, is basically just the default Fire Red Leaf Green experience. There are a few other things to spice up the adventure, like infinite rare candies, the physical special split, and the EXPL, but like I said, the experience is mostly identical to the Gen 1 remakes. Moving on to the second honorable mention is Spades and Clubs. I've had my eyes on this project for a little while now, but jumping into its first release, I was stunned. The visuals are absolutely breathtaking, and the Pokemon designs were very cute and charming. Combined with the incredible music and adorable route designs, every second of my experience was an enjoyable one. The only thing I would have to complain about is that the game seemed balanced in favor of the fire starter, with the first 2 gyms having some very strong steel and grass types. But other than that, it's just a short 2-hour-long demo of a hack that I highly recommend at least keeping your eyes on. For the last honorable mention, it's a strange hack called Pokemon Uncanny. The gimmick here is that it features 75 new non-Pokemon. These are basically the Pokemon that appear in official content like the Crystal Onyx or the cloned Kanto starters from the first movie that aren't exactly considered Pokemon. It's a fun little meme hack that also includes a modern battle engine and a few new boss battles, but it doesn't make many changes to the default Fire Red experience experience, so keep that in mind if you choose to play it. And last, but absolutely not least, is a completed Pokemon ROM hack that completely changes the Hoenn region, with new maps, a new story, and new Pokemon. It's one of my most anticipated ROM hacks of 2025, and that's Pokemon Pisces. The first thing to note about this hack is that while it does take place in Hoenn, it's very far from the version you're familiar with. You'll start in Pacifidlog Town, and make your way through the region backwards, with the first gym being in Teutopolis City. Exploration in this game is especially fun, considering that this new Hoenn replaces those water-filled routes with traversable islands. But what'll hook most people is likely the new Pokemon. It's been almost 5 years since the last time we saw a completed ROM hack with a new region and roster of Pokemon. And even with such a feat, the developers went above and beyond, making each one feel extremely unique, from both their visual designs to their massive variety of learnable moves. If it couldn't get any better, training those new Pokemon will feel incredibly easy, as you'll not only have access to the EXP All, but a new mechanic as well, that significantly increases the experience gain once you reach the town of the next gym leader. However, Pisces isn't perfect. I talked about it more in depth in my full video about the hack, but I feel like the intense difficulty level, combined with the strange evolution requirements for a lot of Pokemon, made the hack a lot less enjoyable than I feel it should have been. And I think that's mostly due to the lack of proper documentation. I know the hack is very new, and that's not something I can expect on release, but I feel even adding the advanced Pokédex system, seen in hacks like Mariomon and Emerald Legacy, would mostly solve the problem on its own. But even with all that said, Pisces is still an incredible ROM hack that I highly recommend if you're a fan of new Pokemon and challenging gameplay. That's going to wrap up this video. I hope I was able to give you a new game to play, and if not, then be sure to check out the other content on my channel. Thank you to my channel members for their continuous support, and have a nice rest of your day.